President George W. Bush, in May of 2001, signed a second of two executive orders, number 13213, Defense Exhibit D310, in which it was stated, and I quote, "The government of Liberia's complicity in the RUF's illicit trade in diamonds and its other forms of support for the RUF are direct challenges to the United States foreign policy objectives in the region, as well as the rule-based international order that is critical to the peace and prosperity of the United States. Therefore, I find these actions by the government of Liberia contribute to the unusual and extraordinary threat to the foreign policy of the United States described in Executive Order 13194, with respect to which the President declared a national emergency. This executive order did not say the alleged complicity, it concluded the complicity. The conspiracy was born, all systems put into motion, and here I stand today. I never stood a chance. This is the broader contextual matrix that regrettably did not and still has not seen the light of day in these proceedings, despite the gallant efforts by the defense to unearth and reveal the contextual framework behind the charges against me. Now, with the two executive orders, the dogs were let out, so to speak. What followed was a dispatch of the attack pack led by Lieutenant Colonel David Crane, Defense Intelligence, 30 years, prosecutor. He, Crane, unlawfully unsealed the court's sealed indictment to his handlers, senior U.S. government officials at the U.S. Embassy in Freetown, and was never held to account. The rest of the operational team are Colonel Brenda Hollis, Defense Intelligence, CIA, U.S. Air Force, Senior Trial Counsel, and now prosecutor. James C. Johnson, U.S. Army expert, 20 years on conventional and special operations, Chief of Prosecutions for the SCSL. Alan White, 30 years Defense Intelligence, recalled from retirement to head up investigations at the Special Court of Sierra Leone. Stephen J. Rapp came on board as Chief Prosecutor for a short time with experience from Capitol Hill, where he served with a U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee sometime before. It came as no surprise to me that as a reward of sorts for Stephen Rapp's diligence in the execution of U.S. foreign policy objectives, through these ad hoc tribunals, he was appointed U.S. Ambassador at large for war crimes issues. In support of the contextual framework of politics, on February 8, 2006, Lieutenant Colonel David Crane, prosecutor, appeared before a U.S. Congress Subcommittee on Africa, Defense Exhibit D404, and spelled out in clear terms the decision taken in support of regime change in Liberia and what needed to happen to solidify that process. There was little mention, if any, in his testimony about Sierra Leone. And here is what he said. I posit that 5 years from now, when the international community is challenged by other crises, Taylor, in Calabar, under the protection of Nigeria, will make his move. We will wake up one morning and watch on CNN as Taylor rides triumphantly down the main street in Monrovia to the executive mansion, daring all of us to come and get him. Unless he is handed over to the special court for Sierra Leone, this scenario is not out of the realm of possibilities. He then asked, how do we assure Liberia's future? And he answers that. Ultimately, he says, what we do about Taylor in the next several weeks will determine the fate of Liberia and the new administration of its president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Crane then sets out several plans, two of which I'll state here. He said, first, hand Charles Taylor over to the special court for Sierra Leone for a fair trial, his kind of trial. This takes him out of the local and regional dynamics that is West Africa. Second, tie any financial and political support to good governance in Liberia. Time does not permit, but the exhibits are present. Not even the Nigerian nation was spared from threats and intimidation, as explained by Femi Kayode, press secretary to President Obasanjo, the Nigerian head of state, who was with him in Washington when President George W. Bush promised, and I quote, to bring Nigeria to its knees if Taylor was not turned over to the special court. And what happened? Obasanjo buckled and capitulated. Now, this demonstrates the significant pressure that was brought to bear on President Obasanjo, irrespective of his personal and leadership obligations to the West African sub-region. And therein lies the dilemma for current African heads of state and government, but how to enter into binding commitments and obligations with the African pairs and remain steadfast, resolute, and unyielding in their fidelity to those agreements in the face of such unrelenting and punishing pressure from powerful Western leaders.